Pixies and Nixies option 1 uses the Faire Isle technique on rows 10 to 21. It's worked from the chart on page 7 of your February mail out. It involves 2 colours, mulberry and shadow, and it's knitted in stocking stitch, so that's knitting on right side rows and purling on wrong side rows. The Faire Isle technique creates a double thickness multicoloured fabric, and in this pattern you are going to use 2 yarns, 2 colours. There are 2 main techniques in Faire Isle knitting that we need to look at in this demonstration, and they will both be used to knit this pattern. The first technique is stranding and the second technique is weaving in. If we look at the chart, you will see that there are places in it where there are 3 or less stitches in a block, and then there are 4 or more stitches in larger blocks within one row. The basic rule is that if there are 3 or fewer stitches before the next colour change, you can strand the yarn at the back of the work. But if there are 4 or more stitches in a block, it is advisable to weave in the unused colour across the back. And I'm going to show you both techniques. So beginning on chart row 1, it's knit 1 mulberry. Okay, now that's the new yarn introduced, so what I'm going to do before I go any further is, I'm just going to single knot the mulberry end to the shadow just to make sure that's secure. Okay, then I can proceed without the fear of that edge stitch falling off the needle. Okay, if we look at the chart then, stitches 2 and 3 are shadow. Now shadow I would say is the background colour, with mulberry being the contrast colour of the pattern work. So I'm going to hold shadow on top throughout all the rows and mulberry underneath, mulberry being the secondary colour. So I'm going to knit 2 stitches using shadow, and then I'm going to pick up the mulberry from underneath the shadow and work 4 stitches. But if we look at the chart, there are 4 stitches in mulberry, and that says to me that we need to look at weaving because it's greater than 3 stitches. So I'm going to knit 2 stitches and then carry or weave the shadow across the back of the work. To weave, you place the colour that you're carrying over the cross of the needles, holding it if you can up out of the way, so that as you go to knit with the mulberry and you draw the needle back, it goes under the shadow yarn, so you just bring that mulberry colour through. Then if you can keep hold of shadow at the back of the work there and work the next stitch, it completes a full weave. And you can see just about there where shadow is carried across the back of the work. Now mulberry is the yarn that's underneath, so I'm going to drop that down, pick up the shadow from on top and knit 2 stitches. Then it's 3 stitches in mulberry, so pick up mulberry from underneath shadow and knit 3 stitches in mulberry. Pick up shadow from on top and knit 3. So this is just stranding because we've got 3 or fewer stitches in a block here in this section of the chart. Mulberry is picked up from underneath, knitted 3, 2 in shadow. Now notice as well how the stitches on the right hand needle I'm keeping to the correct width. I'm not letting them bunch up because that could create puckering, which obviously we don't want. Okay, next it's 4 mulberry. So 4 stitches means I could do 1 weave. So I'm going to work the first 2 stitches, then I'm going to carry the shadow underneath the mulberry over the cross of the needles, knit with the mulberry but lift the shadow out of the way so the needle comes underneath it, just pulling that mulberry stitch to the front. Work 1 more stitch in mulberry and the shadow weaves in, again completing the weave. It's then 2 stitches shadow, 3 mulberry, and you're just following the chart to the end of the row, remembering to weave across the block of 4 stitches. So here we go with the 4 stitches. So work 2. You could work 1 if you wanted to, it doesn't matter where you weave, but I'm going to work 2, bearing in mind that a full weave takes up 2 stitches. Remember to keep your shadow on top and your mulberry underneath, and then you'll find when you get to the end of the row that your yarns are not tangled. Okay, now what I would do at the end of every row is work the last stitch using both yarns, and this will help to keep the edges of your Faire Isle knitting really neat. On row 2, the purl row, we'll be doing some stranding and weaving in, looking out for those blocks of stitches that are greater than 3 where we will need to weave. So the row begins, remembering that first stitch is a double stitch where we've worked those 2 yarns together at the end of the knit row. So the first stitch is purled using shadow. Keep shadow held on top, so that's up here with mulberry underneath. Purl 3 stitches using mulberry, 1 stitch using shadow, 3 mulberry. So simple stranding, no need to weave or carry any yarns just yet. Okay, right. So next there's a block of 6 mulberry stitches. So I could weave once in the middle of that block of 3. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to purl 3 stitches. Then on stitch number 4, I'm going to hold shadow so that it's over the cross of the needles, okay, like that. As I go to purl and bring the stitch through, drop the old mulberry stitch and the shadow that you're carrying off to the back, bring the shadow back round towards you and purl the next stitch, and that completes a full weave. I think it's one more mulberry to complete my block of 6. Then dropping mulberry back down, making sure shadow's on top. 2 stitches shadow, 3 mulberry, 1 shadow, 3 mulberry. Keeping that over and under going. Right, we're on another block now of 6 stitches of mulberry. So picking up mulberry from underneath, shadow, you could work 3 stitches, place shadow over the cross of the needles, purl with mulberry, slip the old stitch and shadow off to the back, and then bring shadow forward so that it stays towards you as you purl the next stitch, thus completing a full weave. It's now 2 stitches of shadow, 3 of mulberry, and I'm just following the chart to the end of the row, just making sure as well, keep making sure those stitches on the right hand needle are not bunching up. Just got one more block of 6 stitches in mulberry to work. 2, right, so I'm going to work 3 in mulberry as I did before. Weave, shadow, and I'm ending the row with my yarns untangled, 2 shadow, and I'm going to work the last 2 stitches using both yarns again, because that is what's going to help keep the edges of my work really neat. Just remember when you turn the work back round that that double stitch there is 1 stitch only. And if we look at the back of the work here, you can see what the Faire Isle pattern looks like on the back, how those strands are looking with the weaves in between.